Hello, my name is Max Edwards. I'm a sales engineer with Kakapo Systems. Today, I'd like to give a brief demo of our call reporting platform, Vision360. Vision360 is a call reporting platform that caters to both call center-based as well as non-call center-based customers, so there's something for everybody. In today's demo, I'm going to go over some of the key features and highlights for both call center and non-call center-based reporting. So, let's begin. To start, I always like to start with our dashboards because the dashboards are the first thing that you see when you log into the portal. Now, for our call center-based customers, there's a call center-based dashboard which we're looking at currently, but for our non-call center-based customers, there's the user and department dashboard which we'll look at a little later. Now, the call center dashboard is live, so we can see how many calls we currently have in queue, our current longest wait time, other key metrics such as our average speed of answer or average abandon time, as well as our unreturned abandoned calls. Now, going down the left-hand side, we'll see our top performing queues as well as top performing agents. Your top performing queues will include information such as calls answered or abandoned, and for agents, you'll see things such as answered, average handle time, or current ACD state. I can drill down deeper into any one of these queues by clicking on the name and selecting dashboard, and that'll open up a brand new dashboard specific for that call queue so we can see how many calls in queue are in that specific queue, the longest wait time for today, live now, call outcomes, as well as information for the agents within that queue too. I have the same information available for agents. All I have to do is click on the agent name and select dashboard, and then we'll see a dashboard specific for that call center agent as well. Things such as how many queues they're a part of, how many calls they've received, how many calls they've answered, current ACD state, and all of that. Now on the right-hand side, we have total calls and call outcome, which are both going to show the same base of information, it's basically just the outcome of any calls that have gone through your call center, whether they were answered, abandoned, escaped, or overflowed. Your total calls will show that over time, which is customizable, so I can change my start or end time or change the intervals in terms of minutes that I see here. And my call outcome will just show me all of that over the course of the entire day, and I can hover over any entry to see how many calls are in that category. Now the live now over here is tied to that calls in queue, and if I click that, what it'll do is it opens up a brand new tab and it'll show me any calls that are currently waiting in queue, such as this caller over here. We'll see their wait duration, queue position, whether they're previously abandoned, and if there's any live callers with an agent, we'd see that as well. Now, going back to our dashboard here, the first place I wanted to take us is the call center summary, which can be accessed by going to and clicking on your calls answered, or you can go ahead and go to your ACD queues and select call center summary. Now, the call center summary is going to summarize all of the major pieces of information for your call centers. You'll see things such as incoming calls, answered calls, bounced calls, abandoned calls. This calls abandoned within 45 seconds is configurable, so if you wanted to set that to 60 seconds, you can, 30 seconds, whatever makes the most sense, and then so on and so forth. We have a whole lot of metrics here to give you basically everything you need to know about your call centers. Now, let's say I want a simpler call center summary. I don't need all this information. To the right of your search button, or search bar, I should say, you have a button here that'll allow you to add or remove different metrics. So, maybe I don't care as much about the percentages. Maybe I don't care about overflows. So let's take those out. Let's kind of narrow this down so it's a lot simpler. Once I'm finished, we'll see here that the report is a lot smaller and it's only showing the metrics that I want included. Now, in case I'm unsure of what a certain metric means, I can always hover over the column header and a tooltip will pop up to explain what that metric is, and if there is a calculation needed to get that number in that column, then we'll also provide the calculation as well. Now, one of the other things that you can do is you can also remove specific agents from these reports. So for instance, let's say Aaron Parsons is one of our supervisors and he very rarely takes calls, but he may have, and we really only want to see the agents who have taken calls or the agent calls in here. I can go ahead and remove him, and I can also go ahead and remove any call centers that I don't want to see in here, such as this one. Now, once I've finished editing this report, I can keep it up here and take a look at it. I can refresh it anytime I wanted to see the most up-to-date information. However, you can also save this as a template or have this saved as a scheduled report so it's emailed out to you at whatever interval you prefer. To set that up, all you do is you go to Add Report over here. For a scheduled report, we'll click As Scheduled Report. And the reason why I like starting the creation of a scheduled report through the report interface itself over here is because any customizations I've made, so any columns I've added or removed, will also be carried on over here, so I don't have to check and uncheck the ones that I want included or not included. Same thing with the call centers as well. So all I need to do is we'll go ahead and give it a name, and then choose our schedule. We'll do weekly for this. We'll have this sent out on Fridays, let's say at 5:30. So we'll click our time. We're on the right hour there, so we'll click OK. Select 30, go ahead and click that. We'll choose the output types we want to receive via email, and then all we have to do is throw in our email address here. We can throw in as many emails as we need just by clicking enter, or just so you can go down to the next space. However, anything more than 3, I usually recommend creating a distro list for, as it's easier to manage. As soon as you're finished, you'll go ahead and click Save, and then you'll see a list of every single saved scheduled report that you've created. You can also create them directly from here. However, like I mentioned, I like doing it from the report itself because any customizations that you make on that report will be carried over when you go ahead and schedule it. Now, the other couple of things I wanted to show in here, we do have the abandoned call summary. So this is going to be a basic but a very important report that shows you a summary of every single caller who's called in and abandoned. But one of the newer things that we've added and that I wanted to show is our heat maps. Now, a heat map is just a way of showing a very high-level overview of the activity in that call center or in a hunt group, because hunt groups also have heat maps. And the other thing about heat maps is if I go ahead and I adjust the time here, we can actually adjust the start time in case we start earlier than 9 or we end later than 6 p.m. for instance. Now in this heat map, we default to our calls received, but we can look at calls abandoned, calls answered, average wait time, or keep my place in queue requests, which is our callback in queue feature. And what this heat map is telling us is, let's say on January 10th between 2 and 3 a.m., we received 61 calls. Between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. on the same day, we received 15 calls. The higher the number, the redder the box will be, just so your eye is drawn to it. I also like taking a look at our average wait times here, so you can see over the course of a day what our average wait time, or over the course of a month, what the average wait times were. This account is used mostly for testing, which is why you don't see everything filled in like you would on a normal call center, but we can see here that our average wait times are actually pretty fantastic, except for these two spots here. The 17th and 18th between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m., we happen to have a much higher average wait time. All right, and just like many of our other reports, these can also be scheduled, so you can receive these via email. We also have some ACD agent-based reports. You have your activity summary, your activity detail, the ACD state report, as well as your sign-in and sign-out report, so we can get some more detailed information about agents' performances within those call queues without just looking at the call queue itself. All right, now I want to switch over to the user and department dashboard and talk about some of the non-call center-based reporting before we wrap it up with our cradle-to-grave call reporting. So as I mentioned before, non-call center-based customers will load directly into the user and department dashboard here, whereas call center customers will load directly into their call center dashboard. The difference between the two, if you have access to both like I do, is your user and department dashboard will only show non-call center-based data. If you have a user who is both a call center agent, but they also place and receive non-call center-based calls, you'll see them on both portions or both dashboards like we do with Steve Tutt here. The idea is basically the same with your user and department dashboard. You'll have some key metrics up top. We have our top performing users with inbound and outbound call counts, as well as our average talk times. If you utilize departments to organize your users, you'll also have top performing department information. And then just like on the previous dashboard, we have a inbound versus outbound call outcome and total calls here to give you an idea as to, what's happening with those calls, and then the breakdown between inbound and outbound. Now, if I step into the user and department section, we have a few reports here. Starting with the user summary, this is going to be similar to the ACD agent summary here. However, this is for non-call center data, so you'll see non-call center calls listed. We'll see things such as total received calls, total answered calls, average durations, and all of that. I can always click on a specific agent as well, just to get a little more information about them, and I'll see a detailed list of all their calls, so I can get an idea as to what their calls look like throughout the course of a day, or whatever the time period is that I'm looking at this information. Now, we also have a few additional sections, such as our auto attendant section, which will go over basically your different auto attendant reports. So with our auto attendant reports, I'm going to set the duration back a little bit further, just so we can see more information. And then what it'll do is it'll list your auto attendants by name. Ours are actually named test auto attendant multi and single. Your calls received is how many calls were taken in by the auto attendant. Calls transferred are callers that choose an option within that auto attendant and leave it. Not transferred just means that they stuck within the auto attendant, they hung up, and we'll see things such as total duration in menu, average duration of menu, and then the average duration of any calls that leave the auto attendant. Your option summary will just break down which options callers are choosing, and then your details will give you a detailed list of every single call that flowed through your auto attendants. Now, your hunt group reports are set up similar to your call center based reports, so we break them down to look at them by hunt group, and we also break them down to look at it by user per hunt group. So for instance, your hunt group summary here will show how many received calls you have in a hunt group, how many calls were answered, how many callers abandoned, so callers who hung up while the phone was still ringing before someone answered them, total wait duration, average wait durations, talk time durations, duration to answers, a lot of good information in here. If I go to the user summary as well, that's just going to break it down and show me all the users that are in my hunt groups, as well as the calls they received. And if a user is in multiple hunt groups, then you will basically see calls from those hunt groups being displayed here. So if I go ahead and select someone such as GK over here, I'm just going to filter. Looks like GK only has calls from the test hunt group. We'll look at Lee Fallon over here real quick. As you can see, just clicking on the name, you can get lots of great information, and we can see here that Lee has actually received calls from both the accounts department hunt group as well as the test hunt group. So we can see, regardless of which hunt group he's received those calls in, we can see basically all the hunt group calls that Lee has received. Now, the last thing that I wanted to cover is the CLI tracing section. This is something that applies to both call center based customers as well as non-call center based customers. And really what this feature is, it's a cradle to grave call reporting feature. It allows you to see basically every step along the journey a caller took from the moment they connected your system, every stop they had along the way, every person or user they may have rung, and then what ultimately happens with that call. So we'll go to last month, we'll throw in a phone number here, and we'll search. And on the face of it, it looks like a pretty fancy big call log with a lot of information. And as I start hovering over different entries, you'll see some get highlighted and they're just one line. Others will highlight multiple lines. Anytime you see multiple lines highlighted, it means that those are all the pieces of one phone call. So in this case here, this caller called into Kakapo support, which is a call center, bounced off of both Lee and Aaron, and the caller hung up or abandoned. We can see here, same thing. This was a call that went into Kakapo support, which is a call center. It bounced off Athel, but then it was answered by Agent Max Edwards. It rang for 5 seconds on Max's phone, and then he spoke to the agent for 24 seconds. My apologies. If we scroll over to the right here, we'll see even more information, such as move from, move to, and then recording state. The other thing I like to add in here, because you can customize this, is the failure reason. So if there is any reason that a call may have failed, such as a user was on Do Not Disturb, or maybe we typed in the wrong extension or something, you'll see that listed under the failure reason. This is taken directly from the server, so this is the same piece of information that a technician would see when they basically trace the call in their call tracing software and look to see what happens. So you'll get the same information that a technician would receive. All right. Well, there is a lot more to Vision 360 and a lot more that I can cover, but I wanted to keep this brief and high level. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. We can always schedule an additional demo. We can dive even deeper. So if you are interested, let us know, and we're happy to schedule a deeper demo so we can address your current call reporting needs. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and have a great one.